Now, we're talking about wrestling, and joining us now is Colin Nicholson, the Chief Executive of British Wrestling. Colin, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, the reason obviously we're talking about it, there's been a bit of a furore in the media, certainly in the Daily Mail, about the the countries of origin of a lot of the wrestlers taking part in the wrestling team. 5, I think, of the 7 are not in the squad, are not British based. Now, just before we get into it, what's your take on it? And you know, I want to give you an opportunity to give your side of it.
Well, thanks very much for an opportunity to speak. I mean, our position is that wrestling in Britain is a very small sport. People don't know much about it, but we are lucky enough to be one of the 26 Olympic sports. And from a very small base with less than 1,000 members, we've got to get our British team to be up to full international standard to take on, for instance, the Russians or the Ukrainians, where they've got almost as many coaches coaching their teams as we have members.
Colin, the key word you said there was British. I don't see how a team that includes, I think it's 2 of the men are from Ukraine and 1 from Bulgaria, 2 of the ladies are from Ukraine. How is that a British team?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The key thing about the Olympics is that it is a world-class competition, so you have to be good to take part in it. And the Team GB will only be able to take athletes that reach a particular standard that's been agreed with the British Olympic Association. So we have to somehow get our British athletes trained up and skillful enough to be able to meet those standards and be able to, with luck, gain a medal on the international scene.
Yeah, but Colin,
do that.
Colin, could I just interject? Can I interject there, Colin? Because I have to say that to have 7 people, only 2 Brits, 4 from the Ukraine, 1 from Bulgaria, would they have gotten these 4 got in the Ukrainian team? Would the 1 got in the Bulgarian team? Are they good enough to get in their teams?
Well, that's a good question. But actually, they've been here since 2007, and some of them are 24 now and so on. So actually, who knows? If they'd been in the Ukrainian system, they might have got to the Ukrainian team. They're in the British system. They've contributed with their techniques to the British system developing them. So they've actually been developing through the British system. And so the difficulty with your question is, if they'd come over yesterday from the Ukraine as members of the Ukrainian team, then yes, but actually they didn't. They came over here when they were young athletes, and you knew what their potential was going to be.
Colin, you said there it was about getting the wrestlers that are good enough to compete for Great Britain against the likes of the Ukrainians, the likes of the Americans and the Russians. Well, the ethos of the Olympics is having the best athletes and best teams from Great Britain competing against all the other teams in the world at the Olympics. Now, these wrestlers you've got aren't the best of Great Britain. They're the best, or some of the best of Ukraine, or some of the best of Bulgaria. And Seb Coe said about leaving a legacy. Now, how does that leave a legacy for the younger wrestlers and the Olympians of Great Britain? It might leave a legacy for the Ukrainians and the Bulgarians. I don't see how that leaves a legacy for Great Britain.
I think we need to go back one step. We need British people of a world-class standard.
They're not British, Colin. They're not British.
Standard. We need to have foreign training partners so they actually understand in Manchester what a world-class standard is. So when you have a sport of individuals like wrestling, you bring in foreign training partners, and then they train against those training partners and get better and get better.
Yeah, but you might. The thing is, what you're trying to do here, Colin, you might have an adverse effect and stop young British athletes actually wanting to go into this sport because you brought foreigners into the sport in the first place. So you might, what you're trying to do, you might have an adverse effect where people go, well, I'm not going to become a wrestler because they're just going to import them.
Well, we didn't bring in foreign training partners and import them in that sort of way to be in the team. We brought foreign training partners in to train the British athletes. And
but they're on the team now.
Made the programme and moved in and moved out of the programme. and the ones that are good enough to get to the world-class standards are still there in the program. Now, what's happened is over time, those training partners actually have got integrated into Manchester life and would like to stay here, and that's the right of anyone that that's been in this country for a long time. Some of them, some training partners, have gone back to the countries that they came from. So this is a matter of individual choice of the training partners, rather than us trying to pad out a team with foreigners, as I think is the point that you're trying to make. That's the point that I would actually deny.
Colin, what are you trying to? What would you say to someone like Chloe Spiteri? She was obviously in the British squad at the Olympic Wrestling Test event. Her hopes now perhaps marginalised, if anything's to go by from Martin's report. Is there not an argument that you'd rather have at least the best of British, even if we're not up there and we're losing? It's it's still, at least it's a British wrestler taking part, and then other people might go, oh, hang on a minute, we might not be great at that, but I'm all right at it. I'll give it a go. Maybe that will encourage them in that way, rather than just try and go for the medal straight away. And specifically with Chloe, what are your views on her situation?
Well, I don't particularly want to comment about individuals, but if we come back to the point that I made at the very beginning, the British Olympic Association demands that we meet certain minimum standards in order to take part in the Olympics. Now, it's up to the selection committee in about May time to decide whether Chloe is able to be nominated to the British Olympic Association to meet their selection policy. But at the moment, she's not on target to be good enough to meet the British Olympic Association's hurdles, and that's our challenge. So what we were doing at the test event, and that she's a great girl, is giving her access and exposure to world-class competition at that level, and she did fine, but she is not of an Olympic standard for London 2012, maybe Rio 2016. Let's work with her, and let's give her maybe some great training partners to bring her on.
What happens if these athletes don't get granted citizenship? You're struggling a bit then, aren't you?
Well,
because it's £3.5 million of lottery money, isn't it?
The point is, and perhaps it comes back to your earlier question about legacy, these people have put in a lot of effort into the world-class program. What we're doing in Manchester is building a program, building a system that builds a legacy, that we know how to run a world-class program, and that's what the British athletes and athletes of the future will be brought through. So that's their legacy, and should they fail to naturalise, that's a disaster maybe for them, that they can't personally take part in the Olympics. But in terms of British wrestling and the purpose that they are brought here for initially, they will have put a lot into British wrestling and nurtured a lot of British talent over the years.
If
they may well stay here afterwards and become coaches, and British athletes in the future will benefit significantly from having their talent as coaches. I mean, I think it's actually it's a great position that the system has been built into, given certainly the resources that it's had, and if they're able to take part in the Olympics, 14 GB, then that would be fantastic too.
Again, you've said no one minds about importing elite coaches in to put their knowledge onto British wrestlers. That isn't a problem. And if your Olympic wrestlers are lucky enough to get citizenship to represent Great Britain, and they win a gold medal, and they're on the podium, when God Save the Queen strikes up, the national anthem, do you think it's going to mean as much to them as what it would do if it was a British athlete who was standing on that podium, listening to God Save the Queen?
If you look at press reports outside of the Daily Mail, then you'll see that actually Jana is busy cooking roast beef and Yorkshire pudding.
Oh, she must be English and
her mother back in the Ukraine. And what she says is absolutely apposite. She says that you don't look to the past, you look to the future, and that she's built a place in Britain for herself, and that she's looking forward to a place in Britain. And I mean, she's been here for many years and loves Manchester. So I think it's great.
Colin, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate you coming on and giving your side of it. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Colin Nicholson, the Chief Executive of British Wrestling.
Okay, thanks very much for the chance to be on your programme.
Not at all. Thank you very much.